And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, President Joe Biden may slip. President Joe Biden may stumble. He may forget people's names, but I got to respect game where I see it. President Joe Biden can still fire off alliteration like the best of them.
And it's threatening farms, fisheries, forests.
If you're a writer and you're writing for Joe Biden, I would not put any alliteration in there.
And it's threatening farms, fisheries, forests.
Watching him read a teleprompter is watching a drunk man drive down an icy road. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the House of Representatives representing the great state of Florida, Congressman Mark Foley. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Good to be with you again.
All right. I want to play 3 different clips for you and have you react to it because this is the big political news of the day. It's also a theme that we've seen in Congress for some time, which is that people get in very safe seats. They stick around for a very long time and in some cases stay beyond their best buy date. Let's start with California Senator Dianne Feinstein being asked to vote in a committee, and she got confused and started giving a speech instead.
Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
Just say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense, and it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
Great,
aye.
Thank you.
That was Feinstein. Here is Mitch McConnell, who was giving a press conference yesterday and appeared to have some medical event take place as he was speaking.
We're on a path to finishing the NDA this week. It's been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
He freezes. No one's sure what to do. It's real uncomfortable. He's just standing there. Staffers are trying to get concerned. Now they whisper over to him.
Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should I just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Go back.
And here's Nancy Pelosi on Joe Biden's laundry list of senior moments.
Again, age is relative. I was in L.A. For some Democratic stuff recently, and I met with Norman Lear, who's 100, going on 101. He was telling me some new shows he was involved in. I was meeting with Frank Gehry, a 90-something architect, showing me new buildings he's building throughout the world. And they were like, 80, he's a kid. But again, it's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well, the president is.
Congressman, what do you make of all of this?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm the administrator of Shady Pines. Every one of I mean, John, it is unbelievable. And I had just seen on Drudge Report Senator Feinstein's problem. And this isn't funny in any way, shape, or form. The Senate needs to have younger people. We have an age limit on pilots for a reason, because we want to arrive at our airport safely. And it troubles me that Mitch McConnell freezes mid-sentence. Biden can't walk across the street. Feinstein isn't sure where she is. And Nancy Pelosi's waxing on about having a conversation with Norman Lear. I mean, seriously. what is happening to our country. We are a geriatric home with, I remember Strom Thurmond. He came up to me, and his driver was a black man. Kay Bailey Hutchinson, the senator of Texas, and I came up to the car door as he was being brought into the Capitol, and I opened the door. He says, "Oh, thank you, Jimmy." I go, "No, I'm not Jimmy. I'm Mark Foley." "And who's that pretty gal with you?" I go, "That's your colleague, Senator Hutchinson." And I'm sitting there going to myself, and this man's being wheeled in to vote. He thinks I'm his driver, and my girlfriend is his colleague. I don't get it. But, we're witnessing a strange pattern of behavior where the longer you serve, the more likely you are to be a chairman of a committee. And those are all the wrong reasons. If those three aren't a test case for term limits and age limits, then I don't know what would make the movement skyrocket, because it is sad. It is very sad that these are our elders, and not to belittle those that are getting older, but when you don't even know while you're on the floor for a recorded vote and you start giving your speech, you've lost your way. And it's time to really suggest that Mitch and others, I'd love to see John Thune, my colleague, former House colleague, young, articulate, energetic. With all due respect to Mitch, he's done amazing things. He brought us 3 Supreme Court nominees through for Donald Trump, and he blunted one from Obama. So he deserves the kudos that come with his longevity and his capability. But enough is enough.
Were the older members in prior generations protected because there wasn't a proliferation of social media? So everyone with a phone can just whip out their phone, catch someone in a hallway, ask questions, get embarrassing tape, and put it up. And in the old days, the staff had an easier time hiding their geriatric members so that embarrassing scenarios didn't happen.
There's no question. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a recording device called your iPhone. And so you can see them real and in person and catch them in their most awkward moment. Another Strom Thurmond story, I'm at a cocktail party, and he's putting roast beef sandwiches, in his pocket. And I go, "Strom, what are you doing?" He says, "Don't worry, I have plastic bags in there." I said, "Okay, sir." But that would have made headline news on any of these sites. So there's no question. Sam Johnson, I served with him. There were several members. You kind of help lead them around. If they got lost in the hallways, nobody would ever know about it because, we had 3 channels back in the early days, ABC, NBC, CBS, and they never covered this stuff. They wouldn't have brought it on the airwaves. There was only 28 minutes to report national news. Now, every site has a place to put whatever stuff you want. And so we are going to see more personal foibles revealed. I mean, when Dianne Feinstein came back, as you'll recall, to the Senate chambers, they were wheeling her in, and people were aghast at the condition of her face, and she wasn't even sure where she was. So it's just not fair. But to credit social media, we're finding out how badly managed our country is. We're starting to see, the Joe Biden stumbles. As Mitch McConnell said, he was sandbagged because it was a joke, because the president tripped over a sandbag a couple of weeks ago. But it's for the greatest nation on earth and for the greatest generation that brought us out of World War II, it's time to retire these folks.
We saw on the tape with Dianne Feinstein at the committee hearing that she had her staff all around her, and they were able to whisper into her ear to just say aye. When you're voting on the floor, are your staffers allowed to be on the floor with you, or is that members only?
It's members only unless you're presenting a bill that has your name on it. So if I were in the well getting ready to speak on an amendment, they would allow my personal staff that are detailed to that committee responsibility to sit next to me and hand me a note or remind me to introduce somebody on the other side that really wanted to speak on the bill. But that's the only time that we have babysitters in the House. It's very strict. Committee staff can be there for the entire committee. If I'm on Ways and Means, which I was, our committee staff would be there in case I have a random question. But otherwise, the floor is for members only, discussion by members only, and not to be prompted by your senior aides to tell you it's A or nay. It's really unbelievable. Now, the Senate has operated differently, and Teddy Kennedy, and I remember we went into the Senate chambers once, and you look around there, and there's a lot of people scurrying about handing notes and paperwork. So I think they have a little bit more leeway because there's only 100 members of the body. In the House, we have 435. So it's probably a little easier for people to be on the floor, but it's still not right. It's still not right if you have somebody just telling you the basic instructions of how to record your vote. Sad.
Did you ever see any of the older members get confused and vote the wrong way?
Oh, we had to remind some of them. They come in, and that could be just an error on their part, not necessarily that they were seniors. But, you get up there, and the board is illuminated, and green is yes, red is no, and we would have some votes that were amazingly lopsided, meaning everybody's voting for it because it was a bipartisan bill, and then you'd go over to the member and say, it's a yes, not a no. You push no. Oh, sorry. And so you would have those few moments, not often. I don't want to exaggerate, but it was a senior member who had been there for since Lyndon Johnson was president. And it makes you cringe because you realize, but for the grace of God, there go I. And I'm not at the time I got elected, I was 40. So I was feeling my oats and thinking I had the world ahead of me. So I get it at 68 now. I get the fact that you can forget something or miss something. But the basic governance of a democracy requires all hands on deck. I mean, the House, we couldn't afford these kind of 2 or 3 people, being incapacitated because we have a 4-vote margin. So we couldn't afford to have people that are ill. And so, when I see the Senate operationally, and believe me, when I got there, many of those very people were in the Senate, and that was back in 1994. So here we are in 2023. I met Diane when she was a senator, and I had just gotten there. Teddy Kennedy, I go through the list of people, some there, some not. But a lot of them have been there through what I call the entirety of their adult life. And it's not the way government should be. That's why I always appreciate term limits. I always appreciate the fact that, because the process itself, John, is not, are you a good legislator? It's just, I've been around so long, I deserve to be chairman of the committee. And they've shooken it up a little bit because, when the gentleman, I think he's from Kansas, got chairman of Ways and Means, he wasn't supposed to get that. It was supposed to go to Vern Buchanan, the more senior member of the delegation. But Speaker McCarthy wanted a close friend to take the gavel, and he gave it to him. So that's a rare occasion when you'll see somebody slighted. But we should not reward people on longevity. You don't give the person a chance to drive the bus when they came in a walker. You don't say, oh, please, why don't you drive the bus? It's very nice. It's all electric. Have at it. Drive on the LA freeway. It doesn't matter. Enjoy your day. We don't do that with our own personal safety. And I mentioned the pilot because it's much in debate on the FAA reauthorization bill. They wanted to add a year to the pilot from 65 to 66 after competency tests and other things. But the farthest we'll get outside that wheelhouse is 66, and even then probably you shouldn't be flying a plane with 240 bodies inside on their way to, hopefully, their safe destination. But, these things have consequences when you allow either people too young to be in the military or people too old to be in government.
Why do you think so many of them hang on? And I say that because I'm thinking, when I'm 90, I don't want to have to deal with flight delays. I don't want to have to deal with flight cancellations. I don't want to be chased down a hallway by reporters. I don't want to have to put up with all of that. I don't want to show up and have community forums in my state or my district. I don't want to get trolled on social media. There's too many things to do in life than to just stick around in your 90s and put up with all of that. Why do you think they do it?
It's called egotism. It really is. You are the big fish in Feinstein's case in a big pond. You know, I would have thought when Barbara Boxer stepped down that Diane would have got the message that younger members, not that she was that younger, but she was, and she was at the top of her game, she stepped aside. It's egotism. It's being senator. It's being congressman. It's being taken to dinners and being the life of the party, everybody hanging on your every word. Not that they really care what you're saying, but if they're a lobbyist or something, they're chuckling at your jokes. And I think they become fearful that their lives just become nothing. They just, everything that they've done all their life, like a professional ball player, you know, you go to the ends of the earth to be in the best shape, to win the games, and all of a sudden it's time for retirement. They can't quite give up the game. But in the Senate, again, a basketball game's not going to change the course of history. In the Senate, it could. Your vote could make a difference in the Supreme Court nominee. Your vote could make a difference in a War Powers Act. And so I do think it's a strong part of their personality. And, you know, I just don't know why they'd want to hang on. Everything you said was something that I was going through in my mind. And I had only served 12 years. I was starting to think, boy, this is a rat race every week on a plane, Monday through Friday, back and forth to Florida. I've got to go meet constituents. I got to go out to the fish fry in Belle Glade. I got to fly home and immediately go to some press conference. It was, and I was young, it was driving me crazy in the sense of fulfilling or filling every bit of my waking hours to fulfill the responsibilities of the job. And so I do think it's all part of their, you know, Roy Blunt, for instance, he stepped aside and he he retired this year. And he had asked me, what do I think? And I said, listen, Roy, you've done an incredible job all your career. You're still a young man. But somebody from the far right is going to come after you in a primary, and all of a sudden you're out of work as a defeated politician rather than going out on your own steam. And he had other things he wanted to do. He could have stayed in that job. Missouri would have reelected him. And it was just he was going through that same thing that most people should go through, is a reflection. My son's going to college. In his case, his son's going to college. They had adopted a boy. And he started looking at the tea leaves of life and saying, where do I want to spend the remaining years? And he's a young man. I think he's 70, 71. But he got it. He knew a new generation. Josh Hawley's, you know, coming to the Senate. And he's young and energetic. And so I would think, like playing golf against a pro, all of a sudden you look completely feeble and inadequate. And so I would have said goodbye long, long ago if I were some of these people. But the Feinstein thing troubles me. She had shingles. She could barely get in the Capitol in a wheelchair. And why she hangs on, knowing you have a Democratic governor that could appoint your replacement and go quietly into the good night. I think Strom Thurmond stayed around because he had a nursing home bed at night that he got to go to it, I think, up at Bethesda. They had a bed for him, and his driver would take him up there. I'm serious. I'm not making fun. He was in a nursing home and being driven to the Capitol to do his job, and only on critical votes. I mean, I remember Pete Wilson from your state had to be brought in on a stretcher. He had some problem, and he had to vote from a stretcher because they needed his vote. I mean, and Pete wasn't an old man, but you know, Dianne Feinstein and some of these others, Joe Biden. I mean, I swear, I think his family should be brought up on senior endangerment. I mean, they're putting him in the middle of every possible harm's way, and then his son has to flip out the country with his antics. It's a job for a younger person, and I do hope one comes along. They can lead this country, take some of these other old timers off the stage, and show the future ahead rather than the past behind.
Here's what's strange about that, though. Take Grace Napolitano, who's a congresswoman here in California, the oldest member of the House right now. She's 86 years old. She just announced her retirement, and the candidate who's the leading candidate to replace her in Congress is Bob Archuleta, the former mayor of Pico Rivera. He's 78 years old. Feinstein is retiring. You look at the people running to replace her. Adam Schiff is 63 years old. Barbara Lee is almost 80 herself. She will be in her 80s in her freshman term in the U.S. Senate if elected. So even though many of these people are retiring and moving on, they're going to be replaced by people who are almost as old as them.
And that's frightening. I think all the voters should ask themselves the question, would I let this person drive my car? And I think if you have an answer to that, like, no, Barbara Lee, you're not getting in the car. You're not driving the car. I mean, seriously, there has to be a message out there that a younger generation is prepared to lead. You know, when John Kennedy ran for office in Congress in Massachusetts, he had some slogan about a new generation offers a leader, meaning very specifically, you know, we'd come out of a lot of problems, Korea, all the other things that were going on, World War II, the Depression, and here's this young, energetic Catholic running when Catholics weren't the most appreciated culture in America. But he inspired people, and he made people want to do things, whether it was to the moon or whatever. But that was because of youth. That was because of his ability, you know, to communicate. Reagan had that, even though he was much older. Reagan, you know, we saw the result of 8 years of Reagan when probably from year 5.5 to 8, he was somewhat demented and not able to complete sentences. So they were keeping him away. You know, and people said, oh, is it from the gun injury? Maybe he had a little problem. But no, that's you got to quit making excuses for people and tell them there's age limits, there's time limits, there's term limits. Let's run a country, not a nursing home.
Congressman Mark Foley, former member of the House of Representatives representing the great state of Florida. Thanks so much for stopping by. We always appreciate your time.
I'm glad my people can't hear this in Florida, one of the largest populations of senior citizens. I'd be voted out of office, John. Have a good one, brother.
Congressman Mark Foley, everyone. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to send our interview with Mark Foley to your friends who may not have heard those Strom Thurmond stories, that's easy to do.
That's right. Go to KABC.com, click on podcast. That's one way. Go to Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. That's another way. And then I just found out today that apparently every podcast that we post also ends up on YouTube. So if you search for The John Phillips Show and you find the interview with Mark Foley, I'm sure you all know how to share YouTube clips, so do it with your friends and share them all and get more people listening to the show because maybe, just maybe, we'll make more money at this. I mean, we probably won't, but it's worth a try, right?
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, I don't know what it is, but the mailbag has smoke on it.
That's right. It's been exploding today. We got tons of letters. Some of them not so kind.
And it's exploding because of the content of what we're getting, not because the Unabomber sent us something.
No. But between the insane Pamela Price stories and the Feinstein sound, we're getting a lot of reaction from the mailbag.
That we are. Only some of it we can read.
Well, you mentioned Katie Porter at some point, and you know what happens to the mailbag when we do that. Also, lots of suggestions for all of the wine songs, so really appreciate all the participation in the program.
I want to correct something I said earlier in the show that turned out to be incorrect. I said that when U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein went back to work at the Capitol, she was in a wheelchair and she was very thin and emaciated looking, but that now that she's been back at the job for some time now, that she's out of the wheelchair. Well, I just saw a photograph that the New York Post put up of Dianne Feinstein wearing the same outfit that she was wearing when she got corrected at the committee hearing. So I assume it happened on the same day. And Randy, they're wheeling her around that Capitol. She's still in the wheelchair.
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's been a real bad day for Di-Fi. And, you know, everyone who defends her right to stay in that job as long as she wants to because she was elected there, it's days like today, it's even hard to defend that position because how with it can she be? Does she even know what she voted for today?
When you see her head on, she looks like an older version of Dianne Feinstein, but she looks like Dianne Feinstein. But when you see these photographs of her taken from the side, she looks like a cadaver.
It's not pretty.
It's 2:55 on this Throwback Thursday, Songs About Wine edition of the John Phillips Show.
I hope you've been inspired today and go down a bottle of Pinot at 5 o'clock.
This audience is already half a box of wine into the night.
I wonder how many people at 12:01 start drinking.
Well, I'll tell you, there are bars around town when I'm driving to come do this show that open up at either 10 or 11 that have lines out the door.
That is dedication.
People are lining up, waiting for the bartender to open up the door so they can go in there and start drinking at 10 in the morning.
Okay, that might be a problem.
Yeah, those people are alcoholics. You can't call them quitters. All right. Now, even though we talk about stories on this particular program that can be crass, they can be vulgar, they can be doing very bad things, we don't control what other people do. We don't control what other people say. But Randy and I, as a point of policy, not just because of the FCC, not just because of our parent company, Cumulus, just because of our obligation to you, the audience, we try to use the Queen's English. We don't control what the world does. We control what comes out of our mouth, which makes it a little difficult when you're doing a story that's essentially nonstop vulgarity. And Randy, there's a story out of the nation's capital today that is essentially nonstop vulgarity, and we're going to have to get creative with how we report it.
That's right, because it turns out the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and California Congressman Eric Swalwell had it out in the halls of Congress while they were walking to the bathroom because Eric Swalwell called Kevin McCarthy, and
McCarthy didn't like it.
No, McCarthy said, if you ever say something like that to me again, I'm going to kick the out of you.
And you know, he came from a family of firefighters, so my guess is he's seen a fist fight or two in his day.
They were in each other's faces, basically nose to nose. Swalwell said something like, are we really going to do this? McCarthy issued a challenge to Swalwell. Call me a cat again, and I'll kick your donkey. To which Swalwell said very slowly, you are a...
Well, that would make his career. If Kevin McCarthy attacked Eric Swalwell in the halls of Congress because Eric Swalwell called him a vulgarity, that would make his fundraising go off the charts. He'd be living on MSNBC, and he'd be the hero of that side of the political aisle.
That would make Congress a heck of a lot more fun. It's been a while since we've had a good old-fashioned fist fight on the floor.
Well, at one point, right after the Civil War, around the Civil War, one member of Congress attacked another member of Congress with a walking stick and nearly killed him. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. My guess is, after seeing these two on television a fair amount, it wouldn't exactly be Fraser Ali.
If you happen to be in Bakersfield and you see Mr. McCarthy in the August recess, don't call him or do. I don't care.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.